I know it. Surprised I'm not being escorted out. Okay, so Paul's imprisonment. He's a prisoner of Rome as he writes this epistle. Now, Paul's imprisonment began when he returned to Jerusalem. Bring Paul back to Jerusalem, Paul then appealed to Caesar that he may receive a fair audience. But before Paul was shipped off to Rome, he was given an opportunity to make his case before King Agrippa. King Agrippa said to Paul, "You almost persuade me to become a Christian." Now, it was at this time, or just after his speech to King Agrippa, his testimony and his case, Paul was then shipped off to Rome under prison watch. And it was during Paul's shipment to Rome that he was shipwrecked. And that was where you're supposed to chuckle and laugh, but no, I'll definitely have to make a note here. Do not laugh. Do not do this again. So, okay. Roger that. So there's just a history of how Paul became imprisoned, right? And it was pretty fascinating because there's a whole story of how he got there. How did he end up in Rome? And we just went through the Cliff's Notes, as it were, to take us through history to see that it was quite impressive to see how many people that Paul got to share his faith with and how he received salvation. In verse 12 it says, I want you to know, brethren, that the things which happened to me have actually turned out for the furtherance of the gospel. His imprisonment and other tragedies that Paul suffered happened for the furtherance of the gospel. There was a greater purpose to the bad that had happened in Paul's life. If there was one person who had a legitimate reason to gripe or to be depressed because of the crazy amount of trials he endured and suffered through, it was Paul. But instead of pouting, instead of whining, instead of being upset towards life or being upset towards God, he actually says that through these trials I have been able to share Jesus with a whole lot of people I would never have met otherwise. What a great perspective of going through really difficult times. I pray that I can look at life the same way Paul does when I go through difficult times. So verse 13, so that it has become evident to the whole palace guard and to all the rest that my chains are in Christ. Not only does Paul become imprisoned for his faith, but now the whole palace guard soon realizes Paul's chains were in Christ. Now, it's really amazing that Paul shared his faith although he's imprisoned. He shares his faith. And he just makes the best out of any opportunity he's given, and that really is very encouraging to me because I want to look at life in the most sorrowful way oftentimes, Oh, I have it worse than anybody else. Nobody knows the sorrow I've seen. Nobody knows my troubles. Yeah, thank you very much. But yet, that's not how Paul is. Paul says, I'm going to take this bummer situation and turn it into a blessing. And he shares his faith. Now, I'd like to do a little play on words here, because this really just kind of jumped out at me as I was reviewing this. And it is that his chains are in Christ. So rather than the prison guards realizing that Paul was chained because of his faith, here it says they understood Paul's chains are in Christ. Before Paul was a prisoner to the Roman government, Paul was first a willing prisoner of Jesus Christ. Paul says in verse 21 of chapter 1 of Philippians, to live is Christ and to die is gain.